Imagine you're in 18th century France. The country is on the edge of the French Revolution. Tensions are running high. People have no way to buy food and are starving, but all the queen can offer is cake?
Hey lady, people are starving. What are we gonna do?
Let them eat cake.
Only that's probably not what happened.
And we're here to tell you what did.
We believe that Marie Antoinette never actually said, "let them eat cake," because this commonly repeated quote is an incorrect translation from its original French, with one main misconception originating from Rousseau's Confessions, a book notorious for its disregard for facts. These mistakes then led to the quote being incorrectly attributed to Marie Antoinette.
We also believe that its spread and acceptance can likely be attributed to the fact that public opinion swayed against her over the course of her leadership.
But we'll get into that later. For now, let's talk about the origins of the quote.
Historians widely believe that the first occurrence of the quote was in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions. Here is the passage where the first version of it is believed to have been written. At length I recollected the saying of a great princess, who, on being informed that the country people had no bread, replied, "Then let them eat pastry."
Now you may be wondering, pastry, that's not what she said. But therein lies the first problem with the quote: questionable translation. In fact, there's yet another more literal translation of the original French: let them eat brioche, or a rich buttery bread that was once considered a luxury. This makes a total of 3 competing translations.
Now, simply having different translations of a work is not wrong, but it becomes a problem if the thing being translated is something as crucial as the words which were supposedly spoken by a famous historical figure. One could expect the people spreading the quote to ensure its accuracy to the source before spreading it all over, but that never seemed to happen. And this lack of fact-checking before sharing information is a common theme throughout the rest of our argument.
But let's stay with Rousseau's Confessions for a moment longer. He certainly tells a good story about his life. The book was an autobiography, but he covers many historical events, and in some places sounds like a decent primary source. But there's just one issue. The book is rife with glaring factual inaccuracies.
He confuses dates, he places key events out of order, or he even makes them up entirely. He even messes up the biography of his own mother. Paul Johnson, in the book Intellectuals, writes about the constant errors in the Confessions and concludes that no statement in the Confessions can be trusted if unsupported by external evidence, because most of the key points have been proven to be completely wrong.
So, we now know Rousseau's Confessions is completely unsupported by any credible evidence. This further calls into question the credibility of the quote, "let them eat cake," since the first place it was documented was such an unreliable source. But there is one final piece of evidence that seals our quote's fate.
John Cunningham, writing for the Encyclopedia Britannica, says that the quote in Rousseau's book was actually never spoken by Marie Antoinette. Remember, he simply said, "a great princess." The very first source to claim that she did was a journal called Le Gape, but that was published over 50 years after the end of the French Revolution, and even the writer for that journal wasn't entirely confident in what he was saying.
So, in the face of such strong evidence against Marie Antoinette ever saying "let them eat cake," why did people continue to believe that she did?
Well, that's probably just because it fit with their existing worldview of her. She was known for throwing lavish parties and generally being careless with France's money. She even had a private retreat in the countryside built for her and her friends. And when people were presented with a quote that further reinforced their opinion of her as someone both figuratively and literally distant from the plight of her subjects, it's no wonder that they accepted it with no fact-checking.
So, did Marie Antoinette say "let them eat cake"? Probably not. In fact, Rousseau most likely made up the quote for the Confessions. It was only linked to her decades after Marie Antoinette's death. We've shown the glaring inaccuracies and ignorance of facts all throughout the history of this quote, and linked it back to its fundamentally flawed original source. But that didn't matter for the French people that were subject to Marie Antoinette's rule. They were simply looking for something that backed up their view of the queen, as humans tend to do. The story of "let them eat cake" clearly shows the power of myths and how easily they can become accepted as facts. So with that in mind, next time you read an interesting historical quote, maybe take a second to verify it before accepting it as a fact. Thank you.
disappeared.